Hello everyone, this is Marco speaking. So previously we created two integrations with ChatGPT and OpenAI models. The first one was created using Nest.js, which is a framework for Node.js, and the second one was created using Python Flask. So if you are the kind of person that prefers to work with serverless applications, then this video is for you. In today's video, we're going to create a serverless application that integrates with ChatGPT and OpenAI models using a serverless application created using AWS SAM with API Gateway and AWS Lambda. So what is AWS SAM? SAM stands for Serverless Application Model, which is a framework created by AWS for managing serverless applications. So you can manage your application completely serverless using this framework. And this is going to be our architecture. So first of all, our user is going to communicate with our REST API, and the REST API will communicate with our Python Lambda code, and the Python Lambda code will communicate with the OpenAI API. So the user will send a message to the REST API, the REST API will forward the message to our Python Lambda application, and our Python Lambda application will forward the message to the OpenAI API. The OpenAI API will process the request using their AI models, and they will send back the answer to us with the Python Lambda code, and the Python Lambda code will forward the message back to the REST API, which is going to send the message back to the user. And the REST API and the Python Lambda will be managed by our AWS SAM project. But before we proceed, if you like this kind of content, just give me a thumbs up, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you can learn more about Python and AWS infrastructure. And don't forget about it, the more you learn, the better you become and more value you can provide. So let's do this. Okay, great. So the first thing that we need to do is go into openai.com/API and make sure to create an account. If you watched my previous videos, so probably you already have an account. If don't, just go into sign up page and create an account. You can use your Google or Microsoft account if you have one. After doing this, you're gonna see a page like this with your account, and then make sure to have a valid API key. So go into the right side, go into view API keys, and make sure to create a new key. If you don't, just click to create a new secret key. Copy it in a safe place because you won't be able to see your key after creating it, and then that's it. Now let's go into the code side. Okay, great. So the first thing that you need to do is to install SAM CLI into your machine. For doing this, you can go into the serverless SAM from AWS, then click to get started with AWS SAM, and then you go into installing SAM CLI. And then you see how you can do this in your operating system, if it's a Linux, Mac OS, or Windows. You follow the steps here, and then you're gonna have SAM CLI installed on your machine, just like this, for example. SAM --version. And then you can see if SAM was properly installed on your machine. After doing this, let's start the application. I'm gonna create a new folder here. I'm gonna call it serverless ChatGPT API. I'm gonna open up this folder on the terminal, and then I'm gonna do this SAM Init to init a new project using AWS SAM. I'm gonna use one of the templates. I'm gonna use the first template. We're gonna customize the template for our application. Yes. If you want to use X-ray on your application, just click yes. In this case, I'm gonna click no. The app name is gonna be called ChatGPT Serverless API. Okay, perfect. Now let's go into the project. ChatGPT. Actually, we're gonna open up this project into PyCharm. Okay, so I'm gonna open up the project here. Click to open, search for the project, and click to open. Trust project. Okay, great. So here we have a basic project created by AWS SAM CLI, and there are some things here that I want to highlight to you. This is the README file, this file here. You can read it here and just see all the details. So there are a few things in here that I want to show to you. The first one is the template version. Since AWS SAM uses CloudFormation under the hood, so this is a CloudFormation template. And at the moment that I'm recording this video, this is the latest version for the CloudFormation templates. Whenever you see this transform into a CloudFormation template, it means that this is an AWS SAM project. The description is the description for our project, so we can put whatever you want here. The globals are the common variables for all the Lambda functions and the APIs that we have in our resources. The resources are the resources that we are using into our project. In our case here, we have a Lambda function, which is going to be integrated with an API gateway. And the output section indicates the outputs that are being exported from our project and can be used into another AWS CloudFormation project. So all the things that you put into our output section, it can be imported into another CloudFormation template into another project. This allows you to create something more dynamic that can be in a CloudFormation template that can be reused throughout different projects, and then you can combine different CloudFormation templates and projects with another one. So here we have our code. So this is the hello world function, which is pointing to the hello world folder, which is this one. The handler function for the AWS Lambda function is this app, which is this app file here. And this is looking for the Lambda handler function, which is this one. So this is going to be our entry point for our Lambda function, which is going to handle the process for integrating with ChatGPT and the OpenAI models. So this is using a Python 3.9 runtime. The architecture is x86. And this Lambda function has one event, which is an integration with API gateway, and it must match this path. So whenever we pass a /hello into our API gateway URL, it's going to trigger this function. So and the HTTP method type must be a GET, and that's it basically. On the output section, we have this API definition. So this is going to be the path for it. So basically here we are creating this function, and then we are using this sub function from CloudFormation to change some parameters here. Like this is going to be the API ID dot execute API, the AWS region, which this API gateway is going to be deployed, /prod, which is going to be our stage variable for the environment, /hello. So we are deploying this /hello, which is going to match this event here. So we are defining this API gateway URL with this /hello. So whenever we call this, is going to trigger this event here. I'm also going to attach some links to you for CloudFormation from AWS SAM and some examples from GitHub, so you can read more about it, so you can read the description for the template and to see more interesting stuff that you can use. This is going to be our hello world function, this Lambda function. And so here we're also passing the ARN for it. This is the Amazon resource name that we're defining here. And this is going to be the IAM role that we are defining for our function for doing whatever we need. And all the permissions that our function needs, it's going to be defined here. And that's pretty much it. Now let's keep going and change our code. Okay, great. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to change the requirements file. These are our Python packages that we need in our project. In my case, I need to add the OpenAI package for using into our project. Besides this, I'm also going to add some code base from our previous project. If you watched my previous video, you're gonna see this file here and this one. This is the model layer that we created previously into our Flask version for integrating with ChatGPT. And so if you create your project, you're not gonna see these files. So these ones I created for the project. So first of all, I'm adding the model layer, which is basically a data class file here with some constants. So what is this file doing? So first of all, this is an object definition that has a static method that receives a dictionary and then parses the dictionary, and then it returns an instance from this class basically. But seeing as we're now working with Flask here, I'm gonna rename this function to be like new instance from dictionary. So this is going to be a new instance from dictionary, or just dict as an abbreviation. And besides this, I'm also adding this file here, which is the service layer. Don't worry about this. When we deploy our code into AWS Lambda, the code there will have the OpenAI package, so it's gonna run perfectly. But here, since we're not configured the Python environment for the project, so it's complaining here. But if you want to create a Python environment for the project and to run to test locally, so probably this is not gonna show the error message, underline message for you. So this is our service, and this is our model that we imported from the previous project. And that's it. I'm going to deploy the first version of the project so we can see if the initial deployment is working. Then we're gonna make some incremental changes to see if the project works perfectly. So for doing this, the first thing that we need to do now is, seeing as we did not deploy the project previously, we just added these two files here. And if you had the path before for the file, I recommend to you in this case to remove the folder and just keep the file name here, which is important here directly, because previously into our Flask version we had to add the package name here, but in this case we don't have to do this. Okay, so let's keep going. I'm going to deploy this project. I'm going to do SAM build to build the project. Okay, great. Our project was successfully built. Now let's deploy the project. So for doing this, for the first time, I recommend you to do SAM deploy -- guided. So when you deploy for the first time, after doing this, you can remove the -- guided if you want to. It's gonna be faster, but for the first time, I recommend you to use the -- guided. The app name, I'm gonna call it serverless ChatGPT API. I'm gonna use US East 1. Yes. I'm gonna disable rollback because we are testing our project. Okay. Yes. For the configuration file, I'm gonna use the default file, which is the samconfig.toml, which is similar to what we use into Python Poetry projects. They also use the toml file. I'm gonna use the default environment configuration. Okay, great. So the project is being uploaded into the AWS ecosystem. It's created the change set to be deployed. So some of these things are common to CloudFormation because AWS SAM uses CloudFormation under the hood. So here showing to us all the resources that are being created into our project. And if you are okay with this, then just click to Y to confirm. And now the resources are being created into AWS. Okay, great. So after a few minutes, the project was successfully deployed into AWS, and this is the URL that was created for the project. I'm gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna open up into the browser, and then paste it here. Okay, perfect. This is our basic project that was deployed into AWS, and now let's keep going. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to integrate this list models function as the first integration. So what we're going to do here on the app, I'm going to import this class here from ChatGPT service, import our service class. Okay, perfect. So here I'm going to create a function similar to the controller function in Flask, def list models. And here basically we are going to return the ChatGPT service of list models. Okay, perfect. So in my case, I'm going to return this. Instead of returning hello world, I'm going to return this function. Okay, perfect. I'm also going to add a variable here to indicate the version 1. This is just for me to know that the code was successfully updated into the SAM project. And that's it. Let's check the code again. So here in this case, the Lambda handler function is calling this list models function here, which is basically calling the service layer and calling the list models. Oh yeah, we need to define the organization and the API key. We can put the environment variables here directly if you prefer, but we also can put the environment variables into the template. So I'm gonna do this. First of all, I'm going to create here into the function definition. I am going to create the session for the environment. Into the environment section, I'm going to add the variables, which are our environment variables. And these are the two that we have. We need to add the organization ID and the OpenAPI key. So these two. Okay, perfect. So now in the service layer, we can read these two environment variables just like we're doing here and just like we did into our Python Flask version. Okay, great. Now let's redeploy the project. First we need to build and then we redeploy it. I'm gonna use the guided again since we're doing this for educational purposes. Same name, same region. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, great. So after a few minutes, the project was successfully deployed, and then we refresh this page. Oh, something went wrong. So in my case, something went wrong, and so I decided to keep this in the video because if the same thing happens to you, this is gonna help you to debug your application. So what we can do in this case, you can go into the AWS console, go into the AWS Lambda console, and then you go to the application section. Search for your application. In our case, it's the serverless ChatGPT AI. Then you click to open up and see the application. Here you can see all the resources that were created for the application and the endpoint for it. So we're gonna click to see our Lambda function. Then you go into the monitor section. Then you go to CloudWatch. So here you can see all the log streams that were created for this function, and then we go to the latest one. We click here, and this is the error message. So the code is complaining that it could not read the environment variables for some reason, and then we can check if the code actually has the environment variables. So this is our Lambda function. We can go into the configuration section and look for the environment variables. In my case, it's already opened, and these are the environment variables, so they were properly injected into the Lambda function as the OpenAI API key and the organization ID. And then if you look at the code, you can see they are defined here, but then I noticed that there's a typo, there's a small typo here. Here I have the OpenAI as a single word, but here I defined with underscores. This is a common problem if you are a programmer, probably you already faced something like this. So I'm just going to copy this and then paste it here. Okay, great. I'm gonna do the same with the other one just to be sure. Copy this, paste it here. Okay, great. Now if you want to test your code locally before deploying into AWS, you can do it this way. I'm gonna build the code again using SAM build. I also changed the timeout here to be longer. I'm gonna use 10 seconds as timeout instead of just 3. And then you can do it this way. You can use the SAM local invoke, and then we pass our Lambda function name, which is this one, and then I'm going to execute it. For running this, you must have Docker running into your machine, and look at this, apparently now everything worked as it should. Then I'm going to deploy the updated code into AWS. I'm gonna do SAM deploy. In this case, I'm not gonna use the -- guide, I'm just going to deploy it straightforwardly. This is gonna be slightly faster, so we don't need to pass all the parameters again, but we still need to see some things. So this is the configuration for the project, and this is the change set. You can see all the things that changed from the previous version to this version, and if we say yes, then we confirm the changes, and then we deploy the new version. The code was deployed. Now let's go back to the URL. Let's refresh this. Perfect. Now our integration with OpenAI is working successfully, and let's keep going. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to change the definitions here. I don't want to use hello world function. I want to use something that is related to our project. So I'm going to call this function as ChatGPT handler function. But I also need to change the references to it into the output section. So I'm going to copy this. For this case, I'm going to call this list models API, because this is going to be the path for listing the available models on OpenAI. And then I'm also going to change this. Instead of being hello, I'm going to use model, just like we did for the Nest.js and the Python Flask version. And here I also need to change the path here to be model. Okay, great. Now I'm going to change this reference to the function. In this case, I'm going to copy this again and then paste it here. And then we also need to change the reference for the IAM role. I'm going to paste it here. And then we also need to change the values here. Change here. And change here. I'm going to keep the description for now, but you can change it to be something more related to your project. This is up to you. Let me check if the whole thing is properly configured. The function and all the references to the function. This is going to be the endpoint for listing the models. So it's going to be /model instead of just /hello. Okay, great. Let's build and deploy it again. Oh yeah, something else. Let's change the version here just to confirm that the endpoint was changed. Okay, I'm going to clear this, SAM build, and then I'm going to do SAM deploy. In this case, you can see that the change set is way bigger than before because we changed a lot of resources here in the template. So we are adding new functions, we are modifying some existing resources, and then we are deleting some of the old resources for creating the new ones, renamed. I'm gonna confirm this. Okay, great. The code was deployed into AWS. Then I'm gonna try this again using the new route for the URL. I'm gonna copy this and then paste it here. Let's see. Okay, perfect. The code is properly working on AWS. Now we have the list models using the same path as before, as we did into Python Flask and as we did into Nest.js. Now let's create the route for interacting with the user, for receiving the questions and then send it to OpenAI and then take it back from OpenAI and send it back to the user, just like we described into our diagram. Okay, great. For this, I'm gonna create another resource here to the output section. I'm gonna call it create question API. The description is going to be, I'm gonna put it this. API gateway endpoint URL for broad stage for interacting with OpenAI models. The value I'm gonna copy from this and paste it here, but instead of model I'm gonna use message, just like we did into the other versions, the Python and then SJS version. And then here on the event section, I'm gonna create another event. I'm gonna use the same Lambda function, but just handling it for a different event. So in this case, I'm gonna create a create question event. If you prefer, we can also rename this to be list models. The type is going to be API. And for the property section, you need to pass the path, which is going to be /message. The method, in this case, I'm going to use a post. So we can pass the question and the other parameters that we defined for the models inside the body. So we define here that we can pass the maximum tokens, the temperature, and the model ID. If you didn't watch my previous video, so the maximum tokens indicates the length of the output that the model can create. The temperature indicates how random is the answer. So the closer to true, which is the maximum value, the answer will be more dynamic, more closer to a human answer, so it can vary as long as you call the function. And the closer to 0, it will be more deterministic. So if we pass the same input, it's going to be the same output all the times they'll call. But if we pass the number closer to true, then it's going to be more dynamic. And the model ID is the model ID for the function. And those are the model IDs. It's kind of hard to see here into this definition, but you can put this into something to beautify the JSON. Let's do beautify JSON. You can paste it here, and then you can see all the models. And for example, you can use this model, which is this ID model, and then you just, or this one, for example, add a similarity, the text babbage, and so on. Just keep in mind, just like I said in my previous video, you have to remove the columns to a dash for allowing the model to work properly, and that's it. So we can pass these parameters to our post method. So this is going to be our new event, which is going to be handled by the same Lambda function. And here we define the outputs and the integration for the API gateway. So it's going to be a /message, and this one is going to be a /model. And here in the code, I'm going to parse this into the Lambda handler. So what I'm going to do here, you can check the event object and the context to see what are the parameters that are sent to the Lambda function. But it's going to be basically this. If the event and the HTTP method is equals to a post, if you want to see this, you can do it this way, print, and then you can print the event if you want to see the whole object which is sent to you. Then we also can do this for the context. But this is the parameter which is sent from API gateway that indicates the API type. In our case, since we have only one get method and another post method, so I'm gonna check the method type. If the method type is a post, it means that the user is trying to get is using this second integration event, which is to get the message from the model. So if this is the case, then I'm gonna create a new function here. I'm gonna call it get AI model answer, and then we pass a data, which is a dictionary, and we return the ChatGPT service dot get AI model answer. And just like we did before, we're gonna parse the dictionary to the class object from the model object. From ChatGPT model, import the model object that we created before, which is this one, the DTO object. Then we do this dot new instance from dictionary. Okay, great. And then in this case, what we're going to do, I'm going to basically do this. Delete this to keep it clean. And then return it. I'm gonna do 3 here. If it's not a post, then I'm gonna use the get method. I'm just going to return, I'm not gonna pass an else here, an else statement. I'm just gonna keep going and return this version instead. I'm also going to add a variable here for controlling the app version. This is just for my internal control, we don't need to pass this. In this case we call the get AI model answer if it's a post. And then we need to parse the JSON object. So for doing this, what we can do, we need to parse the body from the object. First of all, we can check if body not an event. Then what we can do, we return an object saying that the body was empty. In this case, we're gonna pass a 400, which is a bad request. If not, then we just keep going and then we parse the body. But the body will be sent as a string, so we need to parse the body to be a JSON object, to be a dictionary. And then we pass this dictionary object to the function that we just defined. Okay, great. So if the method is a post, then we go into this code block here. I can move this to another function to be more organized. If the body was not in the event, or if it's empty, you can improve your parsing here if you prefer. And then we just return the 400 saying that the body was not found. Otherwise, we parse the body and then we send the dictionary to the function for parsing the user question using this. And then we just return it with the status as 200. If it's not a post method, then we keep using the list models that we created previously. And that's pretty much it. Now we're going to build the project again, SAM build. And now we deploy it, SAM deploy. Okay, great, so the project was deployed into AWS. Let's copy the URL here. But instead of using the browser, I'm gonna use Postman. First, let's try the model. Let's see. Okay, great. So here you can see all the models, which is the get method. Now let's try the post method, which is to interact with the model. I'm gonna create a new execution here. I'm gonna change the model to message. This is gonna be a post method. In the body section, I'm gonna pass a JSON object. For now, it's just going to be the question, which is the attribute that we defined here. Question. And then we can also pass as maximum tokens, temperature, and the model ID as the optional parameters. If they're not passed, then we're gonna use these default ones. I'm gonna say, give me an email template for sending to my friends for New Year. This is something at random that came into my mind. Give me an email template for sending to my friends for New Year. It can be something else that you prefer. Okay, perfect. Look at this. Happy New Year. I hope this year is filled with joy and wonderful memories for you and your family. And blah blah blah. And this is it. Now I have a serverless REST API that can communicate with ChatGPT and OpenAI models. If you also prefer, we can also come back here and change the path for the project. Instead of using Hello World, we can rename this to be something like ChatGPT. And then we can also change it in the template here to be ChatGPT. And then we build and redeploy the project again. And that's pretty much it. If you like this kind of video, just give me a thumbs up, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I hope you liked it, and I see you in the next time.